Hey, welcome to the channel. Glad you're here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a multicam sequence and timeline in DaVinci Resolve. So there's actually a lot of instances and circumstances where you might want to or actually find yourself shooting multiple cameras, whether it's live events, it could be a wedding, concert, sporting event, corporate seminar, any of those kinds of things. Having multiple cameras going at once will really help maximize your time and your effort level. Even if you're just doing YouTube videos, having more than one camera can really increase the production value of your videos. But not only that, it can really cut down on the time spent covering different angles, shooting B-roll, because you can really get multiple things done at one time. The question is, how do you get all those different camera angles and audio sources synced up and put into one sequence and one timeline on DaVinci Resolve? Once you get the basics under your belt, it's really not that much different from editing any normal sequence. So this tutorial is aimed at people with a beginning to intermediate comfort level and familiarity with DaVinci Resolve. And it will work with either the free version or the full studio version. So there's a lot to cover. If you want to skip around, there's timestamps in the description and in the playhead. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and jump into Resolve and get started. All right, so we're open up in DaVinci Resolve. We're in the media page, and I just have a couple of different clips that I am going to sync into multicam clips. I'm going to assume that you know how to get to this point, hopefully. Project settings, you'll just set up a project just like you would normal, nothing special there. You can see we're just in a 1920 by 1080p timeline at 23.976. Whatever frame rate and resolution you're working in, doesn't really matter, just set those as you want. And then again, we're over here in the media page and just, drag and drop your files into the media pool as normal, however you like to do it. And from here, we're just going to select the clips that we want to sync up. So I've got two clips from a project. You can see how they match, just two video clips. And then I have three other clips from a YouTube video that I made. And that has two video clips and an audio file that I'm going to sync up. And it works the same way, whether you have, audio and video or just video, it's all the same. So we're just going to highlight the two video clips that we want to sync. You can right click on either one of them and then come up to where it says create new multicam clip using selected clips and then left click. Okay, so then we have this dialog box pop up with all the options for creating a multicam clip. You can ignore start time code. It should just be set how it needs to be. Next, you can name it something. It just defaults to the file name of the first clip in the sequence. And then it appends the word multicam on the end. If you're only doing one or two clips, that might be fine. But if you have a bunch of clips that you're creating multicam clips from, it might be a good idea to go ahead and name them something that you can easily identify. So I'll just name this staff interview 1, take 1. Okay, once we do that, frame rate should match your project settings. Next are the options for how you want Resolve to attempt to sync these clips together. And I would imagine the most common option would be sound. As long as you have audio going to every clip, Resolve should be able to match up the waveforms and sync everything. So we'll just select sound. Next is angle name. This is how Resolve will name the different angles. So when you jump over into the edit page and open up your multicam viewer, this is how each of the angles will be labeled. I'd recommend that you just make it sequential. That way the angles will just correspond to a number. And then you could just press the corresponding number on your keyboard to switch angles, but you can pick whichever one makes sense to you. We're going to ignore split multicam clips at gaps. This is a new feature in Resolve 17, and I don't really know what it does. It's not in the manual yet. If you're still on Resolve 16, you don't have this option anyway. Detect clips from same camera. So if you have more than one clip from one camera, you can check this, and it will go ahead and throw all of those different clips into your multicam clip, and it will try to identify all those clips based on these parameters. I'm not really sure exactly why you would want to do that, because if you have multiple clips from one camera, they're not going to match, they're not going to be in sync with everything that came after the first clip. So that would be a special use case that we'll just ignore. Since we only have one clip from each camera, that's not something that we need to worry about. Lastly, you've got move source clips to original clips bin, and this is just for organizational purposes. So when this is checked and we hit create, it will create our multicam clip and then just put it in whatever bin we were in, and then create this new bin for original clips, and that's where our source files are now living. So you can have that checked if you want to or not, just depending on your own preference. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next one. So we've got an audio track and 2 video tracks, and you'll do it the same way. Just highlight all of them, right click on any one of them, and then create new multicam clip. And we'll just name this whatever you want to. And it should carry over any settings that you changed or made on that first clip. And if you agree to everything, just hit create. And there you go. If Resolve for some reason was not able to sync everything, it will go ahead and make a clip anyway, but it will pop up with an error message saying unable to sync. So in that case, if you did have a problem, maybe one of your sources' audio was bad, what you could do is highlight each of the clips individually and then just scrub through it. And then you could manually set in points or out points or something. So if you had someone clap on camera, or if you just were able to identify, you know, the exact moment in each clip, you could just set an endpoint by hitting I on your keyboard at that moment, and then go to the next clip and find that exact same spot, hit I, and then go to your next clip and then listen for that same spot, etc. You kind of get the idea, then hit I. And then what you would do is just highlight all of them, right click on one of them and create a new multicam clip. And then you could try to sync based on those endpoints. And then Resolve would just sync them wherever you made those endpoints. And as long as you match them up, it should work. Okay, so we didn't have any issues, so we'll just come back out here. Now you should have a thumbnail, and the thumbnail will show you whichever angle Resolve decided was angle 1. In this case, since we don't see anything, Resolve chose the audio track for angle 1 for some reason. You can also tell that these are multicam clips based on this little icon here. All right, so now we can just jump over to the edit page. You can hit Shift 4 on your keyboard, or just click on the little edit icon down here. You can just drag these down onto the timeline like you would any normal clip. Let's take this one first here, and then just drag this one. And again, on the timeline, you can tell that these are multicam clips because they have the little multicam icon. Now, in order to enable the multicam viewer, I'm just going to close down the media pool just to give us some more space here. Click up here in the upper left where it says media pool. That'll close that. And then on the upper right, on the opposite side, there's this little dual viewer mode. So if you hover your mouse over these two little rectangles, it'll show you the dual viewer mode option. Click on that. And now you've got your timeline viewer and your source viewer. So over here, underneath the source viewer on the bottom left, you have this little icon and a little drop down. So click that drop down and then come down to multicam, click that, and that will enable your multicam viewer. So from here, you can just start swapping angles. But before we do that, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. What you should do now, because like I said, Resolve sort of like randomly assigned these angles. So they made the close-up angle 1 and the wide angle 2. And then over on this clip, it made the audio track angle 1, the close-up angle 2, and the wide angle 3. I would prefer to reorganize those things. So in order to do that, just hover your playhead over one of the clips and then right-click. And then up towards the top, there's this open in timeline option. So left-click that, and that's going to take you to a separate timeline with all of the tracks broken out into individual tracks. So I'm just going to drag these out just so I can see a little better. I just move my playhead over. So now it's just like you have a regular timeline with clips stacked on top of each other. You've got video track 1, video track 2, audio track 1, audio track 2. And from here, if you want to reorganize them, so I would rather have, like I mentioned before, the wide on angle 1. So to do that, bring your mouse over here to the left side and then right click. And then you can move the angles up or down. So move angle down, and that'll swap their position. And you can see it swap the audio along with them. And then you can actually just rename them by just clicking on the name. It'll highlight, and then we can just change that to angle 1 and change this to angle 2. So now to get back into our regular timeline, just double click down in the bottom left corner where it says timeline 1. and that'll bring us back. Unfortunately, it changed us out of the multicam view. It put us back in the regular source view. So just click this drop down and re-enable the multicam. So now you can see we've got angle 1. Oh, it didn't rename. Hold on. Re-enable multicam. So yeah, here we go. Angle 1, angle 2. Another thing I would do, if you want to, so this is up to you. We have essentially a good audio track and a bad audio track. And you can probably tell from looking at this that this is a shit audio track. You know, just clipping waveforms. So this is not going to be any good. So we don't really want to mess with this. We can just get rid of it if we want to. Once again, just right click and go back into that open in timeline. And we can actually just delete this audio track because we don't need it anymore. You can keep it if you want to. But in order to delete it, if you just hold down Alt or Option and then click on that track, it'll highlight it individually, and then you can just hit backspace and get rid of it. So now we can go back into timeline 1. And you can see now, for some reason, it disabled our audio track. So that's weird. I'm not quite sure why it does that. So we'll go back into open in timeline. Once again, just Alt or Option, click on the audio track, hold down Alt or Option, and then hit the down arrow, and then it'll move it down into the next audio track. And then we'll go back over to timeline 1, and it will re-enable our audio. So I can't quite figure out what's going on there. So if you do rearrange the tracks, and if you do delete an audio track, and then when you come back into the timeline, if your audio is gone, go back into open in timeline and switch the position of the audio track. All right, so we're going to do the same thing to this one, and then I'm going to show you another neat trick while you are in the open in timeline. So right click, open in timeline. I'm going to drag these out a little bit so I can see the angle names pop up. And again, you can see here our video 1 track is angle 1, which was just the audio. So that's why there's nothing on this video 1. So I want to reorganize that. I want this wide to be my angle 1. So I'm going to right click over here and move this down. And then I'll move it down one more time. So now it's on my video track 1, and I'll rename it angle 1. And you can see it moved its audio track 2. Now for this one, I'm going to move this down into video track 2, and it's already named angle 2, so that's good. All right, so I'm not going to mess with the audio this time for now, but I want to show you another thing you can do. So before a good practice, potentially, since we've got 2 clips from 2 different cameras, before we start making a whole bunch of cuts and edits to them, we have the opportunity to go ahead and do any color correcting, any color matching, or any color grading you want to do while you have access to the entire clip. So while you're in this open in timeline view, if you come over to the color page, which you can hit Shift-6, or just hit the color tab at the bottom, now you can just color grade these entire clips or color correct these entire clips while you have the opportunity before they're cut down into individual clips. And you want to make sure that you have this unmix icon highlighted so that it's red. If it's gray, it won't switch between your 2 clips. It'll just stay on whichever one is the first one. As long as you just have this little unmix thing highlighted so that it's red, this should behave just like you're used to color grading any normal clips. So this is, once again, this is just a way to go ahead and just make a quick color correction. If you want to just try to match these real quick, you can do that. And then you can always come back and, make more color corrections and color grades as needed. Jump back over into the edit page. Again, that's Shift-4, or just hit the edit button. Okay, so now we're going to jump over into the timeline, double click down there, and now we'll just start working on the multicam. So again, a lot of times when you switch out of the multicam view, it will disable it and just come back to the regular source monitor. So just hit this drop down and re-enable the multicam view. So the next thing we want to cover are these 3 icons here on the bottom middle of the source viewer. Usually it starts out highlighted with this one. It's a little film strip plus an audio icon, and then just a film strip by itself, and then an audio note by itself. So this changes what happens when you actually switch between the two angles. So if we hit angle 1 here, you can see that it made it cut where my playhead was and switched to that angle, but it also switched the audio to that angle. And since we deleted that audio, there's nothing there anymore. So I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that, Command Z. And then if we switch to this film strip only, when we make it cut, so just hit angle 1 by either hitting 1 on your keyboard or left clicking on the angle, it'll make it cut, but it only cut on the video track and left the audio track alone, which is what we want to have happen. And again, I'm going to undo that. Now, if we come over to this one, since we didn't delete all of the other audio tracks, we still have them. When we switch to the film strip and the audio icon, if we make it cut, so if we go from angle, oh shit, hold on, I didn't rename this one. Let me go back into Open in Timeline. So now if we have the film strip and the audio icon highlighted, if we switch to angle 1, you can see that it brought audio from angle 1 over. So that's the in-camera audio that we don't want. So I'm going to Control Z that, or Command Z. And then if I just switch to the film strip only and make that same selection, just swap to angle 1, again, it'll just make the cut on the video track and not the audio track. So that's what we want. So once you have like your audio in place, the audio that you want, you can do it both ways by going into Open in Timeline, and you can either delete all the other audio tracks that you don't want and then making sure that this is showing up by putting it in the right position, or you can do it this way, leaving all the audio tracks in place, and then just when you switch, just make sure that you're on video only so your good audio remains in place. So once you get that kind of under control, it might take a little bit of trial and error just to make sure you got everything situated, but once everything's situated, it shouldn't really have any more issues. So before we dive into multicam anymore, what I would recommend you do before you even think about doing any angle changes or anything like that is just go ahead and edit these clips down as you would any other edit. So you can, leave the multicam viewer up and just treat these clips as you would just a normal clip and edit them the same way. So I'm just going to trim these down real quick. You can go out of the multicam view, just go to your regular source monitor, or you can just close down dual viewer mode and just work on this, like I said, just like you would any normal clip. Before I start editing this one, I'm going to make sure that I'm in an angle that I can actually see something. So you can just go ahead and hit 1 on your keyboard or left click on whichever angle you want to edit from. But once again, if you do that, it's going to make a cut. You can actually switch angles without making a cut if you hold down Alt or Option and then click on the angle. And you can see it switched angles without making a cut there. Likewise, you can just hold down Alt or Option and then hit the corresponding number on your keyboard. All right, so now that I can actually see what's going on, I'm going to start cutting this one down. All right, so we're going to pretend that I edited all that down. So once you have made your rough edit and you want to come back into the multicam view and start making selections, start making actual angle changes, just make sure that your multicam viewer is enabled. And then you can just scrub through this or listen back to this or watch this however you want to. Just
we get a lot of calls on a daily.
And again, just hit the corresponding number on your keyboard and it will switch angles and make a cut. Or you can just left click on the angle and it will make it cut. Again, if you want to switch, so say, oh wait, maybe I wanted to keep it on the wide angle. If you just hit the number 1, or if you left click, it'll switch to that angle, but only after it makes a cut there. So let's Control Z that. So in order to just swap angles without making a cut, just hold Alt or Option and then hit 1 on the keyboard or left click on angle 1 and it'll swap back to that angle without making a cut. Another way to change the angle is by right clicking on a clip and you'll have an option near the bottom to switch multicam clip angle. And then you can just select from the drop down any of the angles you want to. So there's a couple different ways that you can swap angles. So just like you can do in a regular edit, you can also shift these cut points around. So if you hover your mouse over any cut point, you'll see these two opposing brackets and little arrows pop up over the cut point. So if you just click and drag over that, you can move that cut point around. And you can see it's just moving the video track and it's not moving anything underneath it. But you have to be careful that some of these are actually joined to the audio track underneath. So if you click on this one, you can see that it highlights the audio track. So if we move this cut point on the video track layer, it's also going to move the audio underneath it, changing where that audio should naturally cut. So you don't want to do that. So what you want to do, if you have a video clip that you want to adjust the cut point for, and it's attached to audio underneath it, if you just hover over that cut point that you want to adjust and hold down Alt or Option on a Mac, then you should be able to click and drag it, only affecting that video clip, and the audio remains in place. So just to show you that a little bit more clearly, so when we have a video, when we have a cut right over audio and video at the same time, you can see that these are attached. These are attached. So if I try to move this cut point, you can see it's dragging the cut point of the audio as well as the video, and it's totally changing, you know, what we had cut there.
Need. I was gonna say like food. If they. Oh.
So if for some reason we wanted to just adjust this video, we could just hold Alt or Option and click just the video portion. And that way the audio remains in place. And vice versa. If you did want to adjust the audio cut point for some reason, you could just do the same and just hold Alt or Option over the audio cut point and then drag that to where you want it to. Essentially how you make J and L cuts in any sort of edit. The last thing to mention about the multicam viewer is this little drop down where it says default. This will just change the way it displays all the different clips. And just depending on how many clips you have, you might need to reorganize this so you can see more of the clips. And then if you have more clips than can actually be displayed, so say you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 clips, there'll be another option to switch between the different pages so that you can see all of the clips, but you won't be able to see them all at one time. So that's it. So now you can just really just treat this as you would any regular edit. So you can, you know, leave the multicam view at any time, make changes, make cuts, trim it down. You can just go about this like you would any normal edit, and then at any time you want to swap angles, again, you can just right click on the clip and then choose from the drop down to swap that angle. Or you can obviously just go back into your multicam viewer, make sure multicam is enabled, and then you can just come back and just start editing again in the multicam view. So once you get it all set up, I'd say the initial hurdle is just getting everything set up properly. And then once you do, it gets much simpler. So just take a little practice, try it a few times, set up a couple different multicam clips, and just get going with it. Wow, that was a lot to cover. I hope you learned something, and I hope you're confident in setting up your own multicam sequences and timelines, and that you're ready to move forward and start editing them. So if anything was unclear, if you have any questions or even suggestions about how to do things differently or just how you do things, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments, as well as just any other comment. If there's anything you want to have me cover about DaVinci Resolve or video production, or even just content creation in general, just leave me a suggestion. I love just kind of trying to help people out as best I can. And I also like learning new things every day. I learned a lot trying to put this tutorial together. So it's all about learning and improving and just having fun, really. Feel free to like, dislike, whatever you feel. And if you got something out of this video, consider subscribing. Really appreciate it. Really helped me out a lot. And with all that, see you in the next video.